Have you ever wondered what it would be like to live with such a firm ground inside of you that no look of contempt, no criticism or contrary opinion could bring you down? A state where your choices do not falter, your words do not tremble, and your presence does not ask permission to exist. The truth is, for the most part, that security seems like a myth, but it is just an untrained skill. Stoics discovered this centuries ago. Trust is not a birth present, it is daily construction. It's not life that becomes gentler. It's your mind that learns not to bend. Today I'm going to lead you that way. And if you go through it to the end, you'll find that the opinion of others doesn't have the power to hurt you unless you invite it inside yourself. You will realize that the weight of judgment has always been in your hands, and it can be put on the ground right now. Before we proceed, write in the comments. Today, I choose to be my own approval. By writing, you seal a silent covenant with your own strength. It is not a phrase to adorn the screen. It is a reminder that your life changes the moment you decide to be your own foundation. Keep that well, because in what comes next, you may find exactly the turning point you've been waiting for. And when that happens, nothing will be like before. Let's get started. 1. Find out where your insecurity comes from. Imagine your mind as an old mansion. Some rooms are clear, airy, full of life, spaces where you walk with confidence. But there have been closed doors for years. Behind them, the dust accumulates, the air is heavy, and everything is quiet. It is in these places that your insecurities live. You avoid entering because you fear what you can find. But as long as these doors remain locked, fear will continue to grow, invisible and uncontrolled. Insecurity does not arise as a ray that breaks the sky. It is like infiltration. It starts almost imperceptible, one drop at a time. It may have been born of seemingly harmless comments that you have heard over and over again, from a look of reprobation at the moment that most needed support, from silent comparisons that gradually convinced you that it was not enough. Maybe you started when you were a kid, when your voice was interrupted before you finished a sentence, maybe in your teens, when you heard laughter while you were talking, or in your adult life, when a mistake became a label, and without realizing it, you agreed to carry that mark like it was part of who you are. Stoicism invites us to do the opposite. Stop running from these dark rooms and enter them with courage and clarity, because the only way to weaken insecurity is to expose it to the light of consciousness. You do not need to kill the past, but you need to understand it so that it ceases to command its decisions in the present. Take a piece of paper and answer with brutal honesty. In what situations does my voice tremble or my mind freezes? When do I feel like I don't belong where I am? What am I trying to prove, and to whom? Do not edit your answers so that they look beautiful. The more raw you are what you write, the closer you are to the root. And it is at the root that change begins. You may realize that today's criticism echoes an ancient voice that no longer has power over you. That fear of error is not fear of error, but of reliving the shame you once felt. That your anxiety in front of certain people is actually a reflection of trying to fit in a mold that was never made for you. When you see this pattern, something powerful happens. Insecurity ceases to be a diffuse shadow and becomes an identified habit. And habits can be rewritten. Marcus Aurelius said, "The soul is dyed by the color of his thoughts." If yours has been painted by other people's voices, it's time to choose new colors. It won't be an immediate change, but every time a thought of doubt arises, ask, is that really mine? Or is it an echo of someone who's never fully met me? Most importantly, understand that you were not born insecure. You've learned to be, and all that is learned can be unlearned. From now on, your job is not to be perfect, but to open every internal door. Turn on the light and clean what no longer serves. Not in haste, but with firmness. Because the moment you understand the origin of your insecurity, it loses the right to dominate you. When that day comes, you will realize that trust has never been out there, waiting for the world to change to accept you. She has always been in here, hoping that you would have the courage to come home. 2. Stop the cycle of self-criticism. Excessive self-criticism is like a hammer that never rests. In the beginning, you hold it to shape your character, to cut your flaws and become someone better. But in time, it ceases to be a tool and becomes a weapon, and the target is always you. At first, it seems discipline. You believe you are charging yourself because you want to grow, because you do not accept less than your best version. But gradually, this charge becomes a continuous noise, an internal whisper repeating, "It is not enough, you are not enough." And when that voice echoes for a long time, it ceases to be just a thought. It becomes your lens of reality. You begin to interpret every gesture, every attempt, every result as proof of your own failure. This is the cycle of constant self-criticism, an invisible loop that feeds insecurity, weakens confidence, and sabotages any progress. The Stoics knew that internal judgment is necessary for growth, but differentiated judgment evaluation. To evaluate is to observe and learn. To condemn is to crush and give up. The first builds, the second destroys. And for them, the function of critical thinking was to guide action, not to smother it. What many people do not realize is that constant self-criticism is not a sign of humility. It is actually a distorted self-protection mechanism. If you attack first, you believe it will hurt less if the attack comes from outside. But in this process, you get used to living at war with your own mind. To break this cycle, you have to recognize three truths. Error is not identity. Failure in an action does not mean failure as a person. Error is an event, not a sentence. Comparison is a slow poison. To constantly measure yourself by unreal patterns, be it the perfect version that exists in your mind or the polished image that you see of others, is to feed an impossible pattern. The inner voice can be trained, just as you train muscles. You train the way you talk to yourself. A powerful Stoic practice is to create space between error and judgment. When something does not come out as expected, change, "I am unable to. This result was not what I wanted, but I can adjust." It seems simple, but this semantic shift changes everything. You stop putting your identity in play and focus on the action that can improve. At the end of the day, make a balanced inventory. Where did I go wrong, and what can I adjust tomorrow? Where did I hit it, and how can I repeat that? This simple balance breaks the mental programming that only records defeats. And, little by little, you will realize that the voice within you changes its tone, from accuser to advisor. There is something deeply liberating about realizing that you are not defined by your worst moment. You are defined by the sum of the decisions you make after it. Self-criticism without action is imprisonment. Self-criticism with purpose is forge. What Stoicism teaches us is that life is hard enough for us to be our own tormentors. When the inner voice becomes enemy, you waste energy that could be used to act, create, live. But when it becomes allied, you multiply its strength. So from today, set a new pattern. Talk to yourself how you would talk to someone you love and respect. If a loved one made a mistake, would you say that she is a failure or that she can try again? Use the same rule for you. Make no mistake, this does not mean to be indulgent or deny faults. It means to recognize them with the intention of learning and following. It means to use each thought as a brick to build something solid, rather than as a stone to attack. Breaking the cycle of constant self-criticism is, deep down, an act of courage. It is choosing to be your own ally in the daily battle against the chaos of life. It is exchanging the voice of the executioner for the voice of the mentor. And when you do, you will find that the world out there can keep judging, but none of this will have the same weight. Because inside, you will be whole. 3. Change your beliefs that limit you. Limiting beliefs are like transparent currents. You walk, dream, try to move forward, until suddenly something invisible pulls you back. The strange thing is that no one is there to hold you. What holds you is not the world, it is not people, It is not fate. It is a set of ideas that you have accepted as immutable truths. These beliefs are not born with you. They are built slowly, brick by brick, word by word. Maybe they started with seemingly harmless comments. You have no way of doing this. This is not for people like us. You dream too loud. Maybe they came from painful experiences, a public humiliation, a frustrated attempt, a closed door when you believed it would open. Gradually, these episodes cease to be isolated events and become internal laws. You stop thinking that didn't work and start believing I don't work. And this is where danger lies. When the mind confuses a moment with an identity, it turns exceptions into rules and possibilities into walls. Stoicism reminds us that reality is not defined by what happens to us, but by the meaning we give to events. The limiting belief is, first of all, an interpretation that has been repeated so many times that it has gained the weight of a truth. To reprogram it, it is not enough to ignore it. The mind does not accept the void. It is necessary to replace it, layer by layer, until the new belief is as familiar as the old one. The first step is to identify. Stop and ask yourself, what automatic phrases arise when I think about trying something new? What does my mind repeat that keeps me from acting? Is that voice really mine, or is it the echo of someone who's never lived my life? The second step is to question. Every time you hear the old narrative, challenge it with facts. If the mind says, "You always fail at this," ask, "Always? There was no time when I did it." Logic is simple. A single exception is enough to break an absolute rule. The third step is to replace. Instead of, "I can't," say, "I haven't found the right way yet, but I can learn." Instead of, "I'm not good at it," say, "I can improve with every attempt." It's not about empty, optimistic phrases. It's mental training. Just as a muscle only strengthens with repetition, a new belief only becomes natural when you practice it every day. To reinforce, create a winning record. Write down all the moments when you have overcome something you believed impossible. Review this list in the days when ancient belief tries to impose itself. The brain responds to concrete evidence much more than vague promises. In time, you will realize that every limiting belief is only a mental habit, and habits can be modified. Reprogramming the mind is not a unique event, but a continuous process, one brick from the wall at a time, until you realize that the space in front of you is much larger than you imagine. When this happens, something changes deeply. The world, which once seemed narrow and full of barriers, opens up. You begin to realize opportunities where before you saw only threats. It starts to act bolder, not because fear is gone, but because the idea of "I can't" doesn't seem convincing anymore. The most liberating thing is to realize that by changing your beliefs, you change your reality, because most of the boundaries that you believe to be external have always been inside your head. And once you make room for new possibilities, there's no going back to the same place. Reprogramming is, deep down, an act of rebellion against everything you've ever been told you couldn't be. It's consciously choosing to write your own narrative instead of repeating scripts that others have written for you. When this change happens, you don't just live differently, you become different. And from there, no invisible wall will be able to stop you. Number 4, release from constant comparison. The constant comparison is like drinking seawater. The more you drink, the more thirsty you feel. At first, it seems just a curious look to the side to see how others are doing. But over time, this curiosity turns into a lens by which you begin to measure all its value. And here is the first hard truth. This ruler was not made for you, and it will never be fair. In today's world, the comparison has gained strength as never before. Social networks are showcases of selected moments, edited clippings and narratives carefully constructed to look perfect. In seconds, you can see someone's journey, the ideal body, the career of dreams, the cinematographic relationship. And without realizing it, you begin to compare your ordinary day with the best time of the other. It's like judging a book you're writing by the final chapter of an author who's already reviewed your text 100 times. Stoicism reminds us of something we easily forget. Each person has his own destiny, his circumstances, his silent battles. When you compare his path to that of another person, he ignores the soil in which he grew up, the water he received, and the storms he faced. It is impossible to accurately measure something that is not fully known. The constant comparison has two paths, and they both take you away from yourself. Either you feel inferior, believing that you are late, or feel superior, believing that you are ahead. In both cases, your attention is not where you should be, in the present and in what is within your reach now. To get out of this cycle, you have to change the ruler. The only comparison that makes sense is who you were with yesterday. Am I acting wiser than I did 6 months ago? Am I cultivating habits that bring me closer to who I want to be? What can I do today that will make me proud tomorrow? When the metric becomes internal, the pressure decreases. You stop competing with a scenario that does not control and start focusing on what can really change. Another powerful exercise is admiration without comparison. It is possible to recognize and celebrate the conquest of another person without turning it into an attack on its own value. When you feel the temptation to think, why not me? Trade for, if it is possible for him, it can also be possible for me, in my time, and in my way. This simple change of perspective turns envy into inspiration. And here comes one of the most practical lessons of Stoicism. It is only worth spending energy on what is under your control. You control your effort, your choices, your discipline. You do not control the other's time, your opportunities, your privileges, or your pains. Spending energy on what you do not control is, as Epictetus said, wasting life. Imagine two trees side by side. One grows faster, one grows slower. Each receives different amounts of light, water, and wind. It would be absurd to require both to grow at the same pace with the same shape. However, this is exactly what we do with ourselves when we measure ourselves for someone else's life. When you release the anchor of comparison, something changes. Lightness arises. The internal silence that was once filled by the invisible race gives way to a renewed focus. Do you realize that you don't need to beat anyone? Just keep moving on your own path. And the only question that matters becomes, am I honoring what I can be today? Getting out of constant comparison is not an isolated act. It is a daily training of consciousness, a deliberate choice to bring attention back to yourself whenever the mind tries to get lost in the other's terrain. And in time, this training becomes freedom. When you stop running races that are not yours, you begin to walk more firmly on the only road that really matters, the one that leads to your best version. Number 5, develop solid skills. True trust is not born from repeated motivational phrases before the mirror. It is born from silent domination over something, from the intimate certainty that when the moment comes, you will have more than words, you will have skill. Competence is the invisible root that sustains the tree of self-confidence. Without it, any wind of criticism or failure pulls you off the ground. With it, even in storms, you stand. The problem is that many seek trust before seeking competence. They want to feel safe to then act, when in reality, the process is reversed. You act, learn, repeat, improve, and as a consequence, start to trust. Stoics understood this. Virtue is practical. You do not become good at something thinking about it, but doing it, making it wrong, correcting it, and doing it again. Real competence requires patience and repetition. It is not built in a week of intense effort, but in months and years of silent commitment. It is an almost invisible work, the reading done when no one sees it, the repeated training until the muscles hurt, the attention to the details that others ignore. And it is precisely this invisible base that allows someone at the right time to act accurately. To begin with, choose a field to become excellent. No matter if it is in your profession, in a personal project, in an artistic talent, or in a sport. What matters is that you assume the responsibility of learning deeply. Study the theory, yes, but live the practice. If it is communication, speak in public whenever you can. Record videos. Ask for real feedback. If it is leadership, seek opportunities to coordinate, resolve conflicts, take difficult decisions. If it is technical, repeat until the right gesture becomes natural, until knowledge is so incorporated that you no longer need to think to apply. Real competence also requires tolerance to discomfort. In the beginning, you will miss. If you feel inadequate, have the will to return to the safe zone. That is when most give up, and that is exactly where you differ. Because, by persisting, you send a clear message to yourself. I can learn anything. Stoics did not only seek to feel good, they sought excellence. And excellence is not a gift, it is a consequence of accumulated effort. Marcus Aurelius did not write his reflections to impress, but to train the mind. Epictetus did not preach self-control only in theory, but in every daily interaction. They understood that respect for himself is born of knowing that you can trust your own ability. Competence is not arrogance. On the contrary, the more you know, the more you understand how much there is to learn. And that awareness keeps you humble and open. But it also brings a powerful tranquility. To know that, when the situation requires, you do not depend on luck or improvisation. On the day you build real competence, something changes in your posture. You no longer need to convince others that you are capable. Because you know you are. Your trust ceases to be foam and becomes rock. And so insecurity loses one of your biggest fuels, the doubt about your own preparation. Remember, no one respects those who only speak. Respect comes to those who deliver. And consistent delivery is the result of the competence you have decided to build. One brick at a time. When that base is firm, you will not just feel confident, you will be confident. And that difference changes everything. Number 6. Abandon the search for approval. The search for approval is a prison with its doors open. You could leave right now, but you don't, because you learn to confuse the look from the outside with your own value. At each decision, you look to the sides, trying to capture in others' faces a sign of approval. At each achievement, you expect to hear, "I'm proud of you," to finally believe that it was worth it. The problem is that while your measure of value is in someone else's hands, your freedom will always be fragile. This habit was not born yesterday. Since early, we were conditioned to associate love and acceptance to conformity. When children, we were praised when we obeyed, criticized when we dared to disagree. We learned that the safest way to be accepted was to follow the expected script. We grew up with the reflection of seeking a green sign before acting. This reflex, repeated for years, shaped our choices. And without realizing it, we began to outsource our own moral compass. Stoicism dismantles this logic. For a Stoic, to live well is not to please, but to act according to reason and virtue. The judgment of others may even serve as reference, but never as command. The danger of living by external approval is that the pattern changes all the time. What pleases today may be insufficient tomorrow. You end up running a marathon without finish line. This endless race wears out, distorts priorities, and gradually erases who you really are. To break this pattern, one must first recognize when you are asking for approval in a disguised way. It is not only when you ask, "What do you think?" It is also when you shape your choices to avoid criticism, when you hesitate to show something out of fear of not being accepted, when you turn back from the possibility of disappointing someone. It is when you postpone decisions waiting for someone to say, "It will work," to have the courage to act. The Stoic training here is direct and sometimes uncomfortable. Before seeking a compliment or permission, ask yourself, is that in line with what I think is right? Even if no one approves, I'd still do it. In the beginning, this practice will seem rough. You will miss validation, as if you feel abstinence from an old habit. But, in time, you will begin to realize something profound: the tranquility of acting according to your own conviction. This autonomy does not mean arrogance or ignoring advice. It means filtering. It means listening to what is constructive and letting go of what is noise. It means understanding that external approval is a bonus, not the main fuel. When you stop asking for permission to be who you are, something curious happens. Often, the respect of others increases. People feel firmness in those who are not desperate to please. And this respect is different from the applause. It is silent, but consistent. Deep down, insecurity loves when you rely on external approval because it keeps you alive. But on the day your validation begins to be born from within, it loses strength. You realize that you no longer need so many yes to move on. Yours is enough. Living without seeking approval is an act of silent courage. It is walking with your own compass, even when others point out different directions. It is refusing to outsource your life, understanding that it is too short to be lived based on what others expect. And when that happens, something changes in your look, in your posture, in your tone of voice. You carry a kind of trust that doesn't scream, but that nobody can shake, because it doesn't depend on applause. Number 7. Face your fears gradually. Fear is like a shadow. The more you run away, the longer it stretches. The more you face it, the more it shrinks. Many people's mistake is to wait for a magical moment when they will feel ready to face what scares them. This moment does not come. Fear does not disappear with time because it feeds on distance. The more you avoid it, the more you reinforce it. Stoicism does not preach the absence of fear, but the domination over it. It is not about waiting for the heart to stop accelerating, but learning to walk even with an accelerated heart. The difference is how you approach it, with strategy, not with recklessness. Gradually exposing yourself is how to train a muscle. If you try to lift a weight far above your ability, you will get hurt, and worse, you will confirm to yourself that you can't. But if you gradually increase the load, the body strengthens, trust grows, and what once seemed impossible becomes natural. The mind works just like this. Choose a fear and break it in small steps. If speaking in public terrifies you, don't start with a crowded auditorium. Start talking more in small groups, then giving opinions in meetings, until you get to bigger presentations. If making decisions alone makes you insecure, practice first on simple things, then move on to medium impact choices until you reach the big decisions. If exposing yourself on social media causes you anxiety, publish something simple for a few people. Then increase frequency and reach. The secret lies in the small victories. Each stage completed sends a powerful message to your brain: I can handle it. And the accumulation of these messages changes the way you see yourself. What was, I am incapable, turns into, I know how to cope. The Stoics practiced something similar. Marcus Aurelius wrote about meditating daily on the difficulties, not to be surprised by them. Epictetus said that the soul should be trained to endure discomfort as a soldier trains before the battle. The idea was not to seek suffering for suffering, but to build controlled resilience so that, in the face of real storms, the mind would not collapse. When you gradually expose yourself to what you fear, you find that much of the fear is not in the fact itself, but in anticipation of it. Before speaking in public, the heart goes off. Once it begins, you realize that you can. Before making a decision alone, the doubt corrodes. After done, you realize that you survived, and often even got it right. The fear you avoid grows as an invisible enemy. The fear you face shrinks until it becomes an administrative obstacle. In time, this process ceases to be just an exercise and becomes part of who you are. You stop running, start moving forward, and that changes everything. One day, you look back and realize, what was once a reason to lose sleep nights now is just another task on the agenda. And on that day you understand, in practice, that courage is not absence of fear. It is intimacy with him. It is knowing that he will be there, but that he will no longer have the power to decide for you. Number 8. Support the weight of rejection. Rejection is one of the oldest and most universal fears of the human being. It touches something that goes beyond the present moment. Every no we receive echoes all the others we have heard before, from the childhood games in which we were not chosen, to the relationships that ended without explanation, even the professional opportunities that escaped us. Therefore, when it happens, pain is not only of now, but of an accumulation of memories that come back with force. And precisely because of this fear, many people build their lives as a fortress against rejection. They do not risk, ask, do not expose themselves, do not try. They choose safe paths, avoid opposing opinions, prefer the neutral zone where nothing is lost, but also where nothing is really conquered. It is a kind of comfortable prison where the freedom to choose comes accompanied by refusal to live fully. Stoicism teaches us something liberating. Rejection is inevitable, not because the world is cruel, but because each person carries its own set of desires, priorities, and limits. Just as you have the right to say no to something that does not serve you, the other also has. And that no is not a definitive judgment on its value. It is only the expression that, at that moment, in that context, that connection or idea does not fit. The first step to sustain rejection is to separate no from its personal value. When someone refuses its proposal, its invitation, or even its presence, it talks more about the needs and circumstances of that person than about its essence. Error is to interpret rejection as a sentence. It is not. It is just a given of reality. The second step is to withstand the emotional impact without allowing it to paralyze your action. It is normal that it hurts. It is natural to feel the wounded pride, the shaken ego. But what defines your growth is what you do the next moment. You can let the no become a wall, or use it as a sign to redirect the route. The training for this is gradual. Start by putting yourself in situations where rejection is possible, but not devastating. Make simple requests that can be denied. Share ideas in groups knowing that not everyone will agree. Present your work to people who can point faults. Every time you hear a no and go on, it creates a powerful mental record. I can bear it. And in time, rejection ceases to be an existential threat and becomes just a filter. It goes on to serve to separate what is worth what is not worth, who is aligned with you from who is not. The Stoics understood this logic well. Epictetus taught that we do not control the acceptance of others, but we always control our reaction. Marco Aurelius remembered that the opinions of others belong to those who emit them, not to us. The rejection, seen by this lens, ceases to be a wound and becomes a neutral data, something you can use or simply miss. Sustaining rejection is also an act of self-knowledge. When you are not afraid to lose someone's approval or affection, act more authentically. And the more authentic it is, the more inevitable it will be to hear some no's. But these no's function as a natural filter, clearing the way for the sins that really matter. In time, you realize that rejection doesn't break you. It just points out where it's not worth insisting and makes room for opportunities that were previously covered up. This is the moment when freedom begins, when you stop seeing no as an end and start seeing it as a redirection. The truth is that fear of rejection never disappears completely. But when you learn to support it, it loses the power to decide for you. And that is where you start to live, not to avoid pain, but to seek what really matters, even if, on the way, some no need to be heard. Number 9. Live the moment, not expectation. Expectation is an invisible rope that pulls us to a place that doesn't exist yet. It drags us into an imagined future, painted by our mind with perfect colors, or sometimes with threatening shadows. and makes us live by it. Meanwhile, the only space we really have, the present, passes through us like water running through our hands. We are here physically, but our attention is always ahead of us a few steps, trying to guess, control, anticipate. The problem is not to have goals. Goals direct us, dreams inspire us. The danger is to turn each moment into a test to see if we are closer or further than we idealize. When we do this, the now ceases to be lived by itself and comes to exist only as a means to get to another place. And that is where constant frustration arises. The present can never compete with the perfect image we create of the future. Stoicism offers us a radically different view. Marcus Aurelius wrote to himself, "Limit to the present, not as an invitation to neglect, but as a reminder that the present is the only portion of time we have real power over. The future is uncertain, the past is irreversible, and now is the only arena where we can act. Cultivating the present is not simply paying more attention. It is a deliberate act of resisting the tendency of the mind to wander to places where we have no control. It is to be whole in what is happening, without requiring that moment to prove something about what will come. Practice this in a concrete way. When eating, not only swallow the food thinking about the next commitment. Note the taste, texture, temperature. When talking, listen to understand, not just to answer. Observe the tone of voice, the expressions, what is said and what is left in silence. When working, focus on the task at hand, not on the final result or the recognition that may come. This type of presence changes the relationship with time. You fail to see each instant as a step that is only worth the arrival, and you begin to perceive it as an essential part of the path itself. Anxiety decreases because you stop demanding that the present be a perfect preview of the future. And frustration dissolves because every moment, even imperfect, contains something that can be lived fully. Exaggerated expectations are like overstretched elastics. Sooner or later they break and hurt. Already the presence is like breathing. It is always here, supporting you. When you live anchored in the now, the plans continue to exist, but do not govern your experience. You can dream without getting lost in the dream. You can plan without abandoning the moment. The most curious thing is that when you cultivate the presence, future results tend to improve. Because the quality of any tomorrow is determined by the quality of each today. And when you act with total attention, no rush and no distractions, what delivery is more solid, more consistent, more true? The day you learn to exchange obsession with results for full attention to what is happening now, you will discover something that changes life. Even when things do not go as expected, life remains full of meaning. Because value is not only in destiny, but in every step that builds it. To be present is not to be passive. It is to act with all your being in the now, knowing that the future will be only a natural consequence of the way you live this instant. And when that consciousness becomes habit, peace ceases to be a distant place and becomes something that you carry, moment by moment. Number 10, be with those who strengthen your value. The environment in which you live is like the soil where a plant grows. You may have strong seeds and determination to water them every day, but if the soil is poor, toxic, or contaminated, growth will be limited. With people, the same happens. Whoever is around you shapes, in a subtle or direct way, the way you see yourself, how you think, and how much you dare to go beyond. The problem is that, often, we get used to living with those who diminish us. Not explicitly, but with criticism disguised as innocent jokes, comparisons thrown in a light tone, or comments that seem small, but accumulate until they corrode self-confidence. Other times, malnutrition comes by silence. People who do not celebrate their victories, who do not recognize their effort, who do not offer support when you decide to try something new. They do not need to say, "You can't." The lack of incentive already says for them. Stoicism does not preach isolation, but discernment. Seneca wrote that we should surround ourselves with those who help us to be better, and in turn, help others to grow. It is not a matter of creating a circle that just repeats what we want to hear, but of living with people who challenge us without destroying us, who encourage us without flattering us. Surround yourself with people who, when you forget who you are, remember, who aim their forces without hesitation, and also have the courage to indicate where you can improve, but without erasing your flame. People who believe in your potential not because you have already reached the top, but because they realize the solidity of the path you are building. This does not mean putting together a perfect circle or living protected from criticism. It means adjusting the scale, reducing the space of those who undermine their energy, and increasing the space of those who feed their clarity, courage, and trust. This process sometimes requires difficult decisions. Distancing from toxic people can bring discomfort and even temporary loneliness, but it is like pruning sick branches so that the tree can grow stronger. A practical exercise: observe how you feel after meeting someone. If repeatedly you get out of this smaller, more insecure, or drained interaction, it is a warning signal. If, on the contrary, it comes out inspired, more confident and willing to act, this is a relationship that deserves to be cultivated. In time, you will realize that nourishing value in itself is easier when you are on a fertile soil, and that soil is the relationships that surround you. Life is already challenging enough to carry the weight of being among those who do not believe in you. When you surround yourself with people who nourish your value, you create an invisible network that sustains you even in the days when force itself falters. Because in those days, someone will remember you from who you are and what you can become. And that kind of presence is not just company, it is fuel to move on. Just as a field blooms faster when you receive light and water to the right extent, you also bloom when you feed on the right energy. Choose wisely. The world is already full of voices ready to doubt you. Make sure to be close to those you remember every day, that you can more than you know. Number 11. Take up your shameless story. Shame is like a shadow that you try to leave behind, but that never really moves away. The more you run, the more it seems to grow. It feeds on the silence, the fear that someone will find out what you try to hide. It's an invisible prison. On the outside, you keep living. On the inside, you're always negotiating with the past so that it doesn't appear. Stoicism reminds us that what has already happened cannot be erased, but can be used. Every event, including those that hurt the most, is raw material for its construction. The issue is not to have a story without mistakes, but to have the courage to look at it whole, without convenient additions. A book without difficult chapters may seem beautiful, but it is shallow. A complete book, with falls and turns, is what really forms character. Accepting your shameless story does not mean celebrating everything you have done. It means recognizing that even at times when you were not who you would like to be, there was a learning there that today can serve as a guide. It means stopping spending energy trying to erase what is already written and using it to write what is still coming. Many live trapped in a past that dictates their decisions. They carry mistakes like permanent identities. I am what I have done wrong. But you are not your mistake. You are the sum of the choices you keep making. And if today you do different, the past loses the power to be a sentence. He becomes a master, sometimes severe, but always willing to teach. The way to this requires deliberate practice. Sit in silence and write your story. Put on paper the parts that pride and those that shame. Not to expose to anyone, but to get out of the dark what shame keeps locked up. Read without judging yourself, as if it were someone else's life. Ask yourself, what did it show me about me? What standards have I repeated and I don't want to repeat it anymore? What strength was born from the falls I had? This act is liberating because when you bring to light what you hide, shame loses oxygen. What was once a secret becomes understanding. What was weight becomes experience. The Stoics saw acceptance not as resignation, but as clarity. Accepting what was the first step to act lucidly in what is. Marcus Aurelius reflected that, as hard as fate was, he could not change what he went through, but could always change the way he acted from there. When you accept your story, it ceases to be a ghost and becomes a foundation. You stop living trying to compensate or hide and begin to live to build. And this change is visible. The body relaxes, the look becomes firm, the voice loses the need to justify itself. Shame doesn't go away overnight, but every time you face a part of it, it loses strength, until one day you realize there's nothing the past can use against you, not because it was perfect, but because it was honest with itself. Accepting your story is not accepting defeat. It is accepting humanity. It is knowing that, with mistakes and correctness, you are here, alive, and that you have in your hands the power to turn any scar into proof of survival. And that, more than a clean past, is what builds respect for yourself. Number 12. Decide to trust yourself, even without feeling ready. Waiting to feel ready is one of the biggest saboteurs in the action. The feeling of readiness rarely comes before experience. It is born during the process, in the heat of practice, in the mistakes made and overcome. Still, many people postpone important steps, convinced that they must first eliminate all insecurity, have absolute dominion over what they are about to do, or receive some internal signal that the time has come. The problem is that this sign almost never appears, and when it appears, it is because the ideal moment has passed. Stoicism reminds us that courage is not an absence of fear, but the decision to act in spite of it. Marcus Aurelius, who led an empire in times of war and crisis, did not have the luxury of waiting to feel 100% safe before acting. He wrote to himself as the one who gave orders, "You know what to do. Now do." Life offers no guarantees, and whoever expects to have all the answers before starting discovers, too late, that he has lost countless opportunities. Deciding to trust yourself without feeling ready is accepting that absolute preparation is an illusion. There will always be something that you do not know, an out-of-control variable, a risk that you cannot predict. True trust is not born from the absence of these gaps, but from the certainty that you will know how to deal with them when they arise. This decision requires a change of mind, accepting that error is part of progress. Failure is not a sign of incapacity, but an inevitable part of any solid construction. Recognizing that experience is the greatest teacher. There are learnings that no book or planning can offer, only practice. Assuming discomfort is the price of evolution. Waiting to act without feeling discomfort is waiting to burn calories without sweating. It's like jumping in the water to learn how to swim. You don't ignore fear, but you understand that the only way to beat it is to get in. And at first the strokes will be clumsy, the breathing irregular, the rhythm confused. But with each attempt, the body adjusts, the fear loses strength, and you begin to realize that it can go further than you imagined. Trusting yourself is, first of all, a choice. It is not something that happens when all conditions are favorable, but when you decide to act even in the face of uncertainties. It is a rational vote of faith. Faith that your learning so far is enough to begin. Faith that if something goes wrong, you will have intelligence and resilience to correct. Faith that even if you stumble, you will move on. The reward of this posture is profound. Each time you go forward without feeling ready and surviving, or even prospering, you record in your own body and mind the proof that you are capable. This creates a virtuous cycle. The more you act, the more you trust. The more you trust, the more you act. The truth is that you don't need permission to start. Not from the world, not from the circumstances, not from your own insecurity. The perfect moment is a myth. What exists is now, imperfect, incomplete, but charged with power. And if you don't seize it, tomorrow, it will just be another missed opportunity for the list. One day, you will realize that the great changes of your life did not happen when you were fully prepared, but when you decided to take the step even without all the answers. Because readiness is not the starting point. It is the result of having started. Number 13. Choose peace above reason to win. Not every battle you can win deserves to be fought. Sometimes the fight is not for the truth, nor for real justice. It is only for the momentary satisfaction of proving that it was right. And when the need to win overlaps with the need to be at peace, you can even win the argument, but lose the serenity. Many discussions are not born from the desire to build something, but from the urge of the ego to affirm itself. They begin small, with a divergence of opinion, and become fields of war where no one is actually listening to the other. They all just prepare the next sentence to mark point. In the end, victory leaves a bitter taste, because it was bought at the price of harmony, respect, and often of an entire relationship. Stoicism teaches us that true power is not in dominating others, but in dominating oneself. Winning a discussion can inflate pride for a few hours, but preserving peace strengthens the mind for a lifetime. This choice is not cowardice, but discernment, knowing how to distinguish between battles that matter and battles that only wear out. With each conflict, ask yourself, if I win, what do I really gain? If the answer is just, prove that I am right or show who is in charge, perhaps peace is more valuable. When you cling to the need to win, any disagreement becomes a threat. When you choose peace, you carefully select where to put energy. This does not mean to be silent in the face of injustice or to accept abuse. A Stoic defends what is right when it is necessary. But he also knows that not every attack needs response, not every provocation needs to be faced. Some battles exist only to suck out its energy and divert it from what really matters. Practicing this choice requires training. Breathe before you react. Many discussions are overcome not by the best sentence, but by the silence that avoids climbing. Notice the intention behind the conflict. Is it a search for solution, or just a game of vanities? Consider the emotional cost. Is it worth losing peace of mind to gain a point that doesn't change anything important? When you start to choose peace, you find that not every lose is loss, and not every win is victory. Sometimes the act of not responding is the greatest sign of strength. Self-respect grows when you realize that you don't have to prove anything to validate who you are. The world is full of people ready to fight for anything. Few have the courage to walk away, not for weakness, but because they know that tranquility itself is more valuable than any one argument. And it is in this conscious choice that you realize true freedom, that of not being dragged into battles that build nothing. When your peace becomes a priority, victory ceases to be measured by the silence of the other and becomes felt in the silence within you. Number 14. Turn obstacles into allies. Most people face obstacles as declared enemies, walls raised to prevent advancement, time, and energy thieves who arise to frustrate plans and delay dreams. The natural reflex is to try to remove them quickly, or if that is impossible, to lose themselves in lamentations, believing that life is being unfair. But, for the Stoic look, the obstacle is not an external barrier to be destroyed. It is an essential part of the path itself, shaping the way you walk and the force you carry. Marco Aurelius recorded in his reflections, "What is in the way becomes the way." This phrase, simple in form, carries a radical change of perspective. It says that difficulty is not a deviation or error, of course, but the real ground upon which you must advance. Each barrier contains within it a hidden invitation to develop something that could not arise without it. Patience is born of delay. Creativity is born of lack of resources. Courage is born of threat. Discipline is born of forced repetition. Turning obstacles into allies requires 3 deep steps. Accept without resisting the fact that they exist. It does not mean to like the situation, but to stop wasting energy denying reality. Acceptance is the moment when you take back control of your mind, Redefine the meaning of difficulty. It is not the world against me, but the world training me. The weight you carry today is the musculature you will have tomorrow. Adjust the action so that the obstacle itself works for you. A wall can become a support point. A delay can allow for improvement. A criticism can be used as a material for growth. Look back. How many of your greatest learnings were born in quiet times? It is almost certain that the moments that most shaped your strength were also the most uncomfortable. The day you lost something that seemed indispensable. The time you failed in front of everyone and needed to rebuild not only the project, but the confidence itself. The situation that forced you to improvise and, in improvisation, discovered a resource you didn't even know you had. The obstacle, when seen under this lens, ceases to be a thief and becomes an investor. It requires a price, yes, but in return, it delivers resilience, perspective, and internal tools that you will take for life. Every time you respond to a challenge like this, you train your spirit not to panic at the unexpected. Instead of feeling that life is out of control, you begin to realize that it has only presented you with a new lesson. This is not romanticizing pain or pretending that difficulties are pleasant. It is to recognize that, since they are inevitable, the smartest posture is to extract from them as much as possible. The Stoic understands that useless suffering comes from mental resistance, not from the obstacle itself. Instead of spending energy wishing it to disappear, he asks, how can I use it to advance? The world will never be free of barriers, and waiting for it is wasting time. But if you learn to turn every obstacle into part of your walk, you will never stand still. You will become someone who not only overcomes, but grows in the process. And when you look back, you will see that many of your biggest jumps have happened not despite the difficulties, but because of them. Number 15. Protect your energy as a sacred good. Your energy is the most valuable resource you have. Without energy, time is useless. Without energy, talent becomes sterile. And yet many people spend their life force without criteria, as if it were an infinite reservoir, always ready to replenish themselves. They say yes to commitments they do not want, enter into discussions that build nothing, carry burdens that do not belong to them, and allow others to dictate where, when, and how their focus will be used. Stoicism reminds us that living well requires clarity and discipline about where we invest our most precious internal resource. Seneca wrote that, "It is not that we have little time, but that we waste a lot." The same logic goes for energy. It is not that we lack strength, it is that we let it run to places that bring no return, places that only drain. Protecting your energy is not an act of selfishness, but of lucidity. It is to recognize that every interaction, every news, every thought charges a physical and emotional price. That there is no small drainage when it repeats itself daily. And that if you spend your energy with the irrelevant, you will not have reservations to face the essentials. This begins with conscious choices, filtering the people you live with. Some strengthen, others exhaust. If, after meeting someone, you feel lighter and inspired, this is a relationship that is worth it. If it comes out heavy and drained, maybe it is time to rethink the access you are giving. Controlling the information you consume. There is a difference between keeping yourself informed and drowning in a sea of noise. News that only feeds fear and anger does not inform, intoxicate. Respect your limits. Body and mind warn before collapse. If you ignore the signs, they don't disappear. They just come back stronger and more non-negotiable. Think of your energy as a garden. If you allow anyone to enter and step, you will wonder later why nothing blooms. But if you surround, care, and water with intent, you will see that it renews, multiplies, and begins to attract only what is compatible with your cultivation. A Stoic does not waste his strength fighting battles that have no value. He does not engage in disputes that feed only the ego of others, does not answer provocations without purpose, does not give in to concerns about what he cannot control. He understands that energy is like gold. Valuable, limited, and once spent, cannot be recovered at the same instant. When treating your energy as a sacred good, you come to live less at the mercy of external chaos and more guided by an internal core decision. This does not mean to isolate yourself from the world, but to interact with it from a firm center, choosing where it is worth to place yourself completely. In time, you will realize that protecting your energy does not make you more distant from people, but more present with those that really matter. Because when you are not worn out by excess dispersion, you can offer real attention, strength, and presence. And this perhaps is the greatest proof of self-respect. Not to surrender to the world in pieces, but to preserve yourself to offer what you have best at the right time for what really matters. I sincerely hope that this message has been helpful. I sincerely want to congratulate you for coming this far and completing the video. That means that you want to improve as a person. If you like the video, leave your comment. If you don't know what to say, comment gratitude. Then I'll know that you've watched until the end. If you're not already on the channel, what are you waiting for? Sign up now and join us. Stoicism is full of teachings like this, which are applicable to our everyday life. Therefore, I encourage you to continue learning about this philosophy. I leave here 2 videos full of Stoic wisdom so you can continue learning. Until next.